Long before there was a sprig of grass on Earth, there was...
Thesterninator, welcome to the channel. And I have a question for you. Do you remember Pokémon Ranger? It was a Pokémon spin-off series to the mainline games that came out in 2006 with another release in 2008 and 2010, and subsequent releases to the Wii U. But after that, nothing. No Pokémon Ranger for me, no Pokémon Ranger for you. And I was a huge fan of Pokémon Ranger, breaking my wrists drawing those little circles to try and capture these Pokémon, and I miss it. I want more Pokémon Ranger. So while I was thinking about this daily, like I do every morning at 9 a.m., I decided, what if there was a new Pokémon Ranger game? And what if we got to introduce new Pokémon in that game? I think that would get a ton of new audience members to the franchise. So I went out of my way and created Pokémon Rangers Depths. And today we're going to be looking at some of the Pokémon who might exist in this hypothetical game. Let's get started. Hello, I'm the Thesterninator, but my friends call me
an eating machine.
And welcome to the channel. While you're here, don't forget to drop down below, like, comment, subscribe, do that stuff that makes me and YouTube happy, and let's hop right into the video. First up, when looking at the idea of using these deep sea type of animals, I wanted to go pretty unconventional route. We have a lot of shark-based Pokemon, those being like Garchomp and Sharpedo, but I wanted to get something that was off-putting, to say the least. I wanted to pick an animal that really fit that vibe and that aura of being super weird, really hits that deep sea monster type of energy. So I jumped onto the Goblin Shark. For those of you who don't know, the Goblin Shark is terrifying. It's a horrible little creature that lives at the ocean floor, coming up ever so often to feed and scare the local tourists, but I really wanted to capture a lot of that off-puttingness, which became kind of a challenge here, because it has to look cohesive, it has to look nice, has to look in some ways more smooth, and Goblin Sharks are none of those things, so it was truly a challenge to try and make this work. I decided to hop heavily into that goblin aesthetic, even playing with the idea of using these fins to almost mimic those goblin-y ears, but decided against it. I figure that terrible nose is enough, and moving the lips to look more so like big teeth gives it that intimidation factor. So yeah, those that you see there, in my mind, the way they function are not as actual teeth, but just something that mimics teeth. I see them opening up and this bigger mouth inside because Goblin Sharks do jut out their inner jaw in this terrifying and grotesque fashion. Don't look it up. I will not have links in the description. If you don't know what that looks like, you're oh so lucky. I had to research this thing and what they look like, what they do, and it became quite a traumatizing experience because these things are nutty. So I went in, kept a lot of the aspects to it, including that big nose, exemplifying that chin that doesn't exist on Goblin Sharks, but gives it a little bit more of that goblin aesthetic, because I wanted to draw in some of that, but didn't want to go over the top and just make this what if goblin but fish. So yeah, I really enjoy the way that it works out. I know that I probably could have gone green, but I felt like I was going so far the goblin direction that I needed to reinvigorate it with some of that shark type of atmosphere. So I kept it blue, despite the fact that Goblin Sharks are grayish and goblins are green. I think we all know that from Spider-Man. So I played around with the colors, played around with what I could do, and really jumped at the idea of this being a shark with a goblin-y face over a goblin with a shark body. And so this is Depth Seeker. The name comes from the idea of depth and seeker, with that cur at the end, usually a form of word used to describe something bad or evil. For the shiny, I went with a land shark type of look, the shiny that Garchomp should have had, and I've made it a water fighting type. I'm pretty happy with it. While going deeper into the ocean, I thought about these animals that we have down there that aren't necessarily animals, at least not in the definitions that we broadly know. I thought about sea sponges and how they are such bizarre little creatures. I wanted to make something that takes advantage of the filter feeding mechanic that sea sponges utilize to capture food, and realized about halfway through, this is very much looking like Sandygast. So I decided to make it a convergent line. I really enjoy the concept of it being a big sponge that just looks similar. Being that sponges are known to filter feed, I knew that I wanted to keep that hollow center and give it this spongy type of texture. And so it really lent itself to working in that way, bringing in an aspect of Sandygast that is really fun with that hollow mouth, but is utilized in a very different way. In Sandygast, it's used as like an arch to a castle, or just kind of a hollowness that you play with when you do sand type of stuff. This one actually has a purpose, and I dig that. As the water passes through, small micro animals or micro Pokemon will pass through and become prey to this predatory sea sponge, with a little pink anemone on top of the head to give it just a little bit more color. This guy is so fun. And so it is a pleasure to introduce you to Spongygast, the poison ground type. Given that sponges, anemones, and other small creatures of more sedimentary lifestyle in the ocean tend to have poison to keep away predators. It feels a little off-putting, a little weird, but I felt like it worked and really separates this from its counterpart. And as it evolves, I got the opportunity to kind of stretch what this Pokemon could be. Something that I love about regional variants and convergent lines and these varied versions of the Pokemon that we know is how they can immediately take on a very different and drastic look. So I wanted this one to fit that style. I thought about how sponges are actually not one creature, but several, all living in an ecosystem together, very similar to how coral works, kind of a bacterial type of life. And thought, what if that was the case here? What if it was another three-headed Pokemon akin to Dugtrio or Dodrio? And thought, that would be fun. And I could advance these anemones on the heads of the smaller version to become almost like hands on this one, so that it looks like it's waving at you as it sits on the ocean floor, getting moved by those currents, and also looks like it's dancing. But in reality, it's waving in to create those currents that its previous form relied on for food. Now, it doesn't have to wait for food to come into it, it's able to move itself using the currents that already exist to make those currents stronger and draw more food into itself, almost recycling the movement of water there. Newton would be proud. I also gave it this big dumb happy face because Pokemon like Ludicolo always spoke to me on just, why is he so happy? Why does he look like that? And I wanted to create something that fit that same type of vibe, and I think that it works. I think that it fits. I'm really happy with the way that this worked out. The shading ended up being a little bit of a challenge, but the highlights ended up being a ton of fun, because the shading, I had to figure out, okay, if I'm going to shade something like a sponge, what different textures would be there, and how would that change the aspects that I already know with shading? I decided that I was overthinking it with the standard shading style and overcompensated for the loss in that strategy by incorporating a different type of shine using the highlights. It was actually one that I learned when I was doing the school form of Magikarp a couple videos ago, which ended up being a ton of fun, utilizing that same type of technique to show highlight to multiple things all at once, give it the appearance of a slightly rougher texture while still maintaining the highlights that I'm used to. And so this is Palisponge. Palisponge is the evolved form of Spongygast and is still a poison ground type, with the shiny of both this and its previous form kind of reminiscent of their original lines, looking a lot more like Sandygast and Palisand. This guy was a ton of fun. I mean, how could you be mad at that face? Psst. Hey, before we move on, I wanted to let you in on a little secret. Did you know that we recently added some extra perks to YouTube memberships? For only $3 a month, you'll receive exclusive videos as well as your name in the credits of all videos for however long you choose to be a member. You'll also get the chance to receive a Pokemon pack each month. On the first Wednesday of each month, I do a Pokemon pack opening live stream with giveaways, fun games, all sorts of great stuff, all with our little community. But by becoming a YouTube member, you get your name on the Wheel of Solidarity. And if the wheel lands on your name, I ship whatever pack we're opening to you. That's roughly a $10 value for $3 a month. So click that join button down below and let's get back to the video. This next design was a little bit more difficult to kind of wrap my head around, no pun intended for what's to come up, but it is based on a creature that alone is so weird and off-putting that to transform it into a Pokemon felt like I was taking away some of the fantastical elements of this naturally occurring animal. That is the barrel eye fish, also known as the spookfish, and it is a deep sea fish with a transparent head that reveals its eyes and brain. What? How do you? Okay, well, wait. What do you do with that information? How do you make that into a Pokemon? And listen, I went into this whole process of this video thinking about this animal, thinking that would be an interesting animal, such a cool animal to turn into a Pokemon, because it's already so weird. And then I got there and I got stuck. And eventually I decided that I was going to move on to the evolution for this Pokemon, and that gave me a little bit more inspiration on where to go with this one. I decided that I would make this one feel almost like a scuba diver, with that see-through head functioning more as a visor or a protective eye mask, much as it is in real life. I thought about it feeling like it is a small foot soldier, or a fin soldier, I guess you'd say, to this larger version of itself. I just thought about that domed head, that see-through area, and thought, well, that has to be goggles of some sort, has to be some sort of protective layer, and it allowed me to see kind of where I wanted to go with this design. It feels very much like this is a fish on a mission, a fishin', if you will, and I wanted to jump full into that. I understand there are probably a couple more things I could have done, but I wanted to give it some opportunity to grow and some room to advance in that next form. So this is Minuro. Its name comes from minnow and neuro, which is a form of term used to reference the brain and how synapses fire between neurons. It is a pure water type, and for the shiny with that blue visor, just because I feel like a school of blue and pink for these guys, looks cute, makes a ton of sense. And as it evolves, I thought of some of the practices that some fish have, ways that they protect one another, ways that they protect their young. And I thought about how some fish will actually carry their young in their mouths, and bringing that into the equation, as well as this see-through head and this concept that I wanted to go with for this like scuba diver type of fish, it allowed me to have some form of understanding the direction that I wanted to go. So for this design, I thought, what if it was a submarine that had these little minnows that could swim around inside of its skull and look like little workers in this larger submarine? I thought that sounded fun, it sounded really cool, and looking at different submarines, specifically those used in comic books and movies that are a little bit more fantastical and have this big open front dock with this wide window, I thought that that would be really cool to transform into this design. So I did everything that I could to make this feel like a submarine. Once I had that down and an understanding of the direction that I wanted to go for this, everything kind of fell into place. I got to move around some of the different aspects to make them kind of fit for that look, giving it that turned up fin on the top that I just really enjoy, to feel almost like a periscope going up to look about, and that see-through head almost looking like this dock inside where these Minuro are able to swim around and be protected by this larger structure. I played with the idea of a mimic eye up at the front over near the face, but ultimately went away from it because it felt distracting. As much as I wanted it to feel like a mimic eye or like a fake eye for this Pokemon, I couldn't see any reason that it would be there. It didn't do anything to increase any tenacity or intimidation for the structure, and it just felt confusing. It felt like one of those things that I would have to explain. Oh, did you know that that's not the real eye? So decided to go without it. Instead, keeping up this cheek type of shape there that allows a separation between the dome structure and the body. I really dig it. I think this is such a fun design, so weird and so different, and the instances of inspiration that came in, I feel like, are all at play for Amygdaluge. Amygdaluge's name comes from deluge as well as amygdala, a part of the brain that controls rage or anger and impulsive emotions and physical actions. Made it a little bit tougher for its stat total, and for the shiny, went with this greenish hue that would allow it to blend into the ocean. So, which of these Pokemon was your favorite? Do you miss Pokemon Ranger? Do you remember Pokemon Ranger? And if other games in the Pokemon franchise were to get new and exciting spin-offs, what do you think those would be? I'm so curious about your thought process on that. So yeah, drop down to the comments and let me know. If you're interested in getting high-res images of these Pokemon, as well as access to some specific and exclusive videos, make sure to join the Patreon. And if you don't support, that's perfectly fine too. I host a free poll every Monday to Monday on that Patreon, so just give it a free follow so you can be in the loop on that. If you want to own designs done by me that showed up in videos or maybe didn't show up in videos, you can find me at my Ko-fi, which is also linked down below. And as I always say, make sure to jump into our Discord as well. That link is down there too. We have a fast-growing community of really talented and interesting people over there where we talk about Transformers, Digimon, Five Nights at Freddy's, everything across the gamut, and I hope that you can become a part of that community. All that being said, it sounds like you know where to find me, and I'll catch you in the next one. But before we go, I want to remind you about the Multiversal Drift. That is an art challenge that I've been running for the past month and a half or so, And the idea is that you get to submit your art across different social media platforms, those being X, Blue Sky, YouTube, Instagram, or even my Discord, which again is linked down below. I go through all of those, find some of my favorites, incorporate them into our Multiversal Drift storyline, and at the end of each month, we did one in January, another one's coming in February, and another one in March. I'm going to be dropping videos where we explore these various worlds. So think of a world where something different happened. Maybe this is a world where humanity evolved in the distortion realm. Maybe it's a world where one evil team leader was replaced by another. I'm so curious to hear what you guys come up with. And hey, before we go, I want to give a big shout out to all of the people who help make these videos possible. I say that at the end of every video, but I hope that you guys understand how 100% true and honest that is. I couldn't do any of this without you guys. For those who don't know, at the beginning of January, I went full-time content creation. And with the support of everyone, be that monetary, emotional, or just as friends, thank you. But I want to give a big McThankies from McSpankies to some of our higher tier supporters, those being Jeremy Sunday, Justin Grenier, Siren Sprague, Daniel, Kaylin Cat, Soren Frost, Styx TV, Dan Bush, King Squid, Kofi supporter, and our new YouTube members who I want to thank as well. This is a new thing that we've been doing with the YouTube membership. So I want to thank all of these people in the form of them saying something that just disgusted me. Crimbo McSwizzle? Kaylin Cat? Sigil Sealed? Maca Art? Justin Grenier? Tinte? Anastasia Maria? Beep Beep? Aaron Best? Ash the Green Dragon? Umbra Equitus? Tuck? Buddha Penguin? Arctic Rose Creations? Somni Stars? Zed Ravenmore? Phoenix Smith? And those are our YouTube members. Don't forget that you can join our membership. You get a bunch of free stuff. We get to play some fun games. So I hope that I can see you there. And bye.